The Manichaean faith may be one of the most influential religious traditions that many students have never heard of. And it spread from the Persian Empire in the 3rd century of the current era. It went west to the Roman Empire, through the Mediterranean into Northern Europe, and it went east to Central Asia and all the way to East Asia. And it persisted in all of these regions until suppressed by authorities espousing other religious traditions, which viewed the Manichaeans as heretical competitors. And as such, it was eliminated by authorities espousing Christian, Muslim, or other religious beliefs. The faith started with the prophet Mani, who lived from 216 to 274, and he was born in Mesopotamia, which was then part of the Persian Empire. Mani grew up in a Christian community, and when he was 12 years old, he received a vision, and an angel appeared to him called the Twin, and the angel brought divine revelation about the kingdom of the paradise of light. And Mani began to doubt some of the teachings of his own religious community, and this led him into conflict with the elders and with the leaders, as one can imagine. And then at age 24, Mani received a clear call from the angel, his divine twin. God was calling him to be a prophet. Mani was an apostle sent to bring the truth, the gospel of truth, to the world. Mani understood himself to be the paraclete. And this is the term used by Jesus when he told his disciples that after him he would send a helper. And this is paraclete in Greek, which other Christians understood as the Holy Spirit. And Mani explained it was himself. He's the paraclete. He's the helper that has been sent by Jesus. He's the promised helper of the scriptures that the Christians had. And he was sent to help the world. Mani's mission was to correctly pass on the message of Jesus that the Christians did not accurately have. Mani's message was the true form, as he taught the world about righteousness, and he would hold it accountable for sin. Now, Mani understood himself to be the seal of the prophets. He was the final prophet, that he was in the line of prophets that stretched all the way back to Adam, the first human, and then their prophets appeared at different times and in different places. Mani was the successor of Jesus and of Zoroaster, and Zoroaster is the prophet of the Zoroastrian tradition. This was the predominant religion in Persia at the time. And it's one of the traditions I didn't include in this course because of time. And Mani also saw himself as a successor of Buddha. So he was in the line of the prophets for Jesus and Zoroaster and the Buddha, and here was Mani. Mani was aware of the religious traditions of India, and those are traditions we previously discussed in the course, and he had traveled widely, including visiting Central Asia and India. Thus, Mani's teachings corrected the errors held by contemporary followers of Jesus and Zoroaster and the Buddha, since these prophets' teachings were not accurately presented in the texts of those traditions. To correct this, God sent Mani. So what did Mani teach? Well, Mani taught that there was an eternal conflict between good and evil, between light and dark. And this conflict between the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness is alive at this very moment. It plays out like this. Everything that lives, humans, animals, fish, plants, all of this contains fragments of light. And these are the sparks of the divine, which have become trapped in the evil of matter. Our evil urges, the selfish, base actions that sully our world, all stem from cravings of the body. That is, it stems from the darkness out of which matter emerged. But our souls draw us to the good. That is where the spark of the divine is located, in the soul, not in the matter, which is evil. And there's a war within each person, just as there's a war in the universe between good and evil, between light and dark. There is that war between body and soul, matter and spirit, good and evil. And Mani organized a community of believers, a church, which had a head known as the guide, and then there are these ranks of followers, which are organized into the elect, and that's the top ranks. Those are like the clerics or the clergy of the Manichaean church. And then there are the people, and they are known as the hearers. And the elect lived in monastic communities, and they strove for absolute purity so that their souls of light would escape their bodies of darkness at death, and their divine spark would return to the light to achieve this purity in full. The elect, in order to reach that goal, must be celibate, abstaining from sex, because through intercourse you generate new bodies, and matter is evil, so we wouldn't want more of that, so one needs to be celibate. They also avoided alcohol. They did not eat meat. They lived on a vegetarian diet. The elect were so pure that when they ate, their own bodies were able to separate the divine sparks from the matter in the food. So you have this elect, right? Those that are on their way for this glorious end, liberating from the body out of evil into the goodness of the kingdom of light. But the majority of the people were not the elect. They were the believers. And so these were the people following the elect. And these were the hearers, as I mentioned. And they're called to live a moral life, to avoid sin, but they could marry, and they supported the elect. Now you could not return to the light without entering the elect, so the divine sparks in the hearers upon death would be reincarnated, and hopefully in the next life they could be hearers, and they too could achieve liberation. Now, one of the aspects of Manichaeanism that made it attractive was that it explained so clearly why bad things happen, why the world is so unjust, why disease and natural disaster happen. That is this whole problem of theodicy, but theodicy is particularly weak for the theistic traditions, because how do you explain natural disaster? You could account for the horrors of the humanity, from the Holocaust to persecution, injustice, inequity, what have you. You could attribute that to the will. But how do you explain natural disasters? Well, the Manichaeans had a very easy explanation for that, because they don't posit an all-powerful God that's created a perfect, wonderful world, and a God who is all good, omnipresent. That's not how they explain it. They say there's an evil God, and there's an evil God has created matter, so matter itself is inherent with evil, and we need to be liberated out of this. So it's easier because the whole system, the natural system, and all these political systems are all inherently evil. That's Manichaeanism. Evil is there, and so you can fight that evil by liberating yourself from it and then going back to the good. So there are these two forces for Mani, one good, one evil. One is spirit, the other is matter. Matter is the problem, and it is evil. And notice how this is different from Neoplatonic tradition. But the Neoplatonic tradition could also say matter is flawed. They have no evil in it. They don't posit an evil force, but they do point to the flawed nature of matter as a problem. For many adherents, this direct explanation was compelling. It was for St. Augustine, who embraced the way of Mani before turning to Neoplatonism and then Christianity.